onto server Fujitsu, you'll see that we have the operators here. Click on the icon and click install and fill in the details. We can go to this port and see that this operator is actually running now. So we can perform the creation in multiple ways. One is you can use a GUI, such as this one provided here, and then you can fill in your details. Alternatively, we can actually use a command line to do it. This is very useful for the DevOps environment. I'll start doing the deployment from my command line, and it will start creating the FEP cluster in the system. This cluster is with one master and two replicas. And the replicas are synchronous replicas. That means the transaction will not be lost. If something happens to the master and it's gone, the replica will still have the latest transactions. Okay, so let's check whether how is our deployment going. So you can see that we have our master running already, and we are starting the replica. Okay, so now all the three ports are running fine. Then we'll start to do some advanced features of our FEP. So with the Fujitsu Enterprise Postgres, we have 3 unique features. So the first thing I want to show you is about the transparent data encryption, short form TDE. So in our Postgres deployment, we can create table space that are encrypted. And when data are written to that encrypted table space, it's actually transparent to the user. They carry out their normal SQL operation, just like they did. But when the engine starts to write the data into that table space, it's all encrypted. So if someone somehow have the capability of stealing the database, because that table space is encrypted, they won't be able to see the content inside that, even if they found out a way to start the database. So the next thing I want to show you is about something called data masking. So if you look at this one, we are creating a table with 4 columns. The first 3 columns are just some numbers, but the 4th column is called date of birth. And usually this date of birth information is secure and should be private to the owner of that information. Imagine that we have an operator that will occasionally check some records in the system. We would not want that operator to be able to see the full date of birth. So we have something called data masking by doing some kind of policy in the system that we say will mask the whole date of birth column. And then when the operator tries to select the same table, you can see that the record has actually been masked with a different value. The original value is still in the database. The second one that we want to show you is a partial masking. So we have another table that has the phone record here and date of birth. Again, on the date of birth, we will do a full masking, but on the phone number, we will do a partial masking. It's governed by the policy that we do in the system. And once we enforce that 2 policy, if we select the same table again, you can see that now the phone number is partially masked, whereas the date of birth is still fully masked with a different value. Again, this masking is happening on the replica as well, not just on the master. So normally when we create a table, we will index that and we will do some query on the system. But at the same time, we can enable the VCI on that table and do the query again. After carry out the analysis, you can see there's a difference in execution time here. So remember, we look at this table that our myFEP-STS0 is the master database. So what happens is if I actually kill that master database and we'll observe this table again, this one is terminating, it's being terminated. And later on, when the system detects that this container is gone, it will promote one of the other container to become the master. Our operator is actually a level 5 certified operator. What that means is we have included extra functionality that includes the monitoring functions as well as the auto scaling functions. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to show you the 2 new functions in our new operators. So first of all, as you can see from this screen, that we have the 3.1.0 operator deployed in our systems. We go inside. Here, this is empty space. There's nothing deployed at the moment. So I'm going to show you like a deployment that's done by one of our deployment scripts. As you can see from this YAML file, this content of it is exactly the same if we click on this button and then like get this GUI thing coming on the screen. But instead of doing it on the GUI, we do it on the command line. To enable monitoring, one of the very crucial configuration that you have to do in the configuration file is these 2 lines. Monitoring, enable it. If you put that monitoring enable equal to true, when you deploy your workload, there will be an extra container deployed together with our workload, and it will enable the monitoring part for it. So let's try it. Okay. So we can come back to the GUI. We can see that it's starting to deploy this FEP cluster. I call it FEP with monitoring. We'll look at the events and let it gradually populate the events. The events is another enhancement that we put into this release. In the past, like you deploy FEP cluster, but you have absolutely no idea what is going on. And we put in some events here to let the user know that something is happening behind the scenes. So far has created volumes, has created some configuration, internal users, and certificate for the authentication. So it's still going on, and if you look at this message, it's still working. Okay, it looks like our cluster is running successfully without any problem. Now we are going to look at some graphs from the system. So as I mentioned, this exporter will collect some metrics and then send it to the Prometheus backend. we actually have a dashboard that we have created. I have already imported this dashboard into our system, so I'll click on it. Here we can find out the namespace. I just deploy my FEP cluster. This is the exporter. So you can see this is the exporter here. I'm matching that. And then I'm select the database that I want to monitor. So right now, let me drill down a little bit. So this is the real-time performance of our database. This is looking at the CPU and memory. We can actually look at the database transaction as well. Looks like there isn't much happening. So I'm going to simulate some load on the database. While generating the load, well, let's look at graphs. So you can see that the load has increased. And this like fetching data from the database has gradually increasing as well. So this is our way to monitor this database. Now we will actually demonstrate the next thing. As your workload increase, you wouldn't want to let the performance hamper your applications. So what we have included in this release is like we can do the auto scaling for you. This is especially useful for when you have an application that does a lot of read-only transactions. So when your read-only transaction increase the workload, we can help you to scale out your FEP cluster. So right now, looking at it here, we have only one pod running that can handle your transactions. What we are going to do is we can update the configurations. I'm going to insert some details into our configuration to tell the system that it should automatically scale out when the workload has increased. So I'm updating this configuration. Here we have a couple of lines I add. If the CPU utilization exceeds 20%, then I'll automatically increase the number of ports to handle the workload. And we specify here the maximum that it can spin up is 3, although you can increase it to any numbers. I'll save it. With our performance here as well, I'm going to inject some workload onto the system. As the system load has increased, now it's spinning up another container to handle the workload. Yeah, the CPU utilization has increased, and we are spinning up this one. So with the two functionality, that's very useful for the customer running on a high loading system. First, you have an insight into how your database is performing. And the second is, you know that if there is a high demand on the database, especially read transactions, we can actually automatically spin up another port for you so that it can handle the extra workload on the system.